So Julie, do you want to talk about some of the top-level findings from the study?
Sure. One of the key findings is that districts are really enthusiastic about LCFF, about the idea of local control, about being able to make decisions about how to spend dollars to best serve the interests of their kids. They also have a few worries. The first is they're concerned that the state give this system enough time to mature, that districts have enough time to play with it, and that there not be huge changes. The second is districts believe there's still not enough money, and in particular they worry about what happens when Prop 30 goes away, and they're very concerned about the additional money they have to put into the pension system. So some of them describe this as the LCFF new dollars are a wash. The third issue has to do with the state's commitment to local control. This related specifically to the supplemental and concentration grants, and districts are a little concerned that they have the flexibility to spend those dollars while understanding they have responsibility to raise achievement of the three target groups of students.
And Dan, how did districts respond to the whole LCAP process?
Well, we didn't find any fans of the LCAP, and a lot of the complaints were really about the technical features of the template. But I think more importantly, the LCAP really failed to communicate, tell a story of a district's vision for how it was going to use the resources. It also didn't really serve as a basis for an accountability system. It didn't have strong enough, specific enough, measurable enough goals in most of the final LCAP products. So I think we've got a lot of work there. I know the state board has already made revisions that are going to be helpful, but it's yet to be seen whether or not it's going to be able to fulfill sort of these dual roles of communication and accountability.
So Julie, you talked about some of the changes that took place in the budgeting process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We thought this was pretty interesting, that every place we visited made some changes in how they do their budgeting. Some districts actually engaged in needs-based budgeting. They started the process from what do we need rather than what can we afford. Some of them felt they needed to use this year to make up for lost ground, programs and services they had lost in the recessionary cuts. But nearly all of them brought together the budget and curriculum and instruction people to jointly develop their spending patterns, and that was very new and very different.
Mm-hmm. And another piece of that budgeting process, of course, was the engagement with parents and the community. What did you find about community engagement in this process?
Yeah, it was interesting in that the districts were quite enthusiastic about the idea of engagement, of community engagement, of parents' involvement in the LCAP process and the development of a district budget. And at the same time, they admittedly lack the skills and resources to have it be deeply meaningful. It is a very ambitious plan in terms of true, meaningful, deep engagement in complex issues. It's not something that districts have a lot of experience with. It's not something that even local governments have a lot of experience with. And so there's enthusiasm for doing it. There is, I think, a lack of skills to actually succeed in getting communities to really think about how do we allocate resources for the public good.
And finally, I know you ended up oversampling county offices of education, and clearly the counties have big new responsibilities as we move into the local control funding formula era. What did you find when you talked to county offices?
We found that they embrace this new work with the same enthusiasm that districts had. They like the idea of districts having local control, and they are a little concerned about going forward how they are going to approve LCAPs. In other words, whether they themselves have the capacity and resources to actually look critically at the LCAPs, to provide whatever technical assistance is needed, and then to engage in a serious approval process.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
You know, I don't think that we can overemphasize the enthusiasm part of this. And I think that it's important to say that everybody involved that we ran into was not only excited about it, but were doing the best they could given the limits of time and resources. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of eagerness to see this thing through and to make it work. And I think that's a good starting place. There's obviously a ton of work left to be done.
Great. Thank you both.